Welcome back, seeker of mysteries. Before we begin tonight, I want to take a moment to welcome our newest subscribers to the vault. Ron, Alina, Bruce, and Michelle. Your presence here adds another layer of depth to our shared search for the unknown. For those of you who have just joined us, the Obsidian etching is nearly complete. The first 100 seekers to subscribe to this channel will have their chosen names etched forever into the stone of this observatory. To join them, ensure you are subscribed, like this video, and leave a comment with the name of a historical character you wish to represent you. As we now stand with 11 subscribers in our inner circle, let us remember that each name added to the stone is a witness to these mysteries. Tonight, and in every journey hereafter, I will begin our session by whispering the names of the chosen from the stone, calling your historical avatars into the room to witness these mysteries with us. It is my way of ensuring you are never truly alone in the dark. Tonight, we turn our gaze from the stars above to the depths below. We gather in the midnight observatory to seek the truth of a legend that has haunted the human imagination for over 2,000 years. Atlantis, the empire that vanished in a single day and night of misfortune. Plato, the great philosopher, was the first to speak its name. In his dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias, he described a civilization of unparalleled power and beauty, a naval empire that ruled the waves and possessed technology and wisdom far beyond its time. A continent larger than Libya and Asia combined, situated beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar, the gateway between the Mediterranean and the vast Atlantic Ocean. Tonight, we will examine the evidence. We will look at the maps, the geology, the ancient texts, and the whispered traditions that suggest Plato was not merely telling a story. Let us begin with what we know. What Plato actually wrote in his own words, translated across the centuries, but preserved in intention and detail. In the Timaeus, composed around 360 before the Common Era, Plato presents the story as historical fact, passed down through generations. The tale came to Athens through Solon, the great lawgiver, one of the 7 sages of Greece. Solon had traveled to Egypt, to the ancient city of Sais in the Nile Delta, a place already ancient when he arrived. There, in the temple of Neith, the goddess of wisdom and war, Solon met with the priests. These were men who kept records stretching back thousands of years, written on papyrus and carved into stone, a continuous thread of memory reaching into the darkness of time. And one priest, elderly and learned, spoke to Solon with a mixture of kindness and condescension. "O Solon, Solon," the priest said, "you Hellenes are never anything but children, and there is not an old man among you." Solon, curious, asked what he meant. The priest explained that the Greeks had no ancient learning, no records that stretched back beyond a few generations. Their memory was constantly erased by catastrophes, by floods and fires, by the cycle of destruction that sweeps across the world at intervals. But Egypt, protected by the Nile, remembered. Egypt kept the records of what came before. And then the priest told Solon of Athens itself, not the Athens Solon knew, but an Athens that had existed 9,000 years earlier. An Athens that had been the greatest city in the world, a beacon of law and virtue. And this ancient Athens had faced a terrible threat. An empire from beyond the pillars of Hercules, an island empire called Atlantis, had sought to conquer the entire Mediterranean world. The Atlantean forces were vast, overwhelming. They had already subjugated Libya up to the borders of Egypt, and Europe as far as Tyrrhenia which we would recognize as the coast of Italy. But Athens stood against them. Alone, abandoned by its allies, the ancient Athenian army met the Atlantean invasion and defeated it, liberating all the lands the Atlanteans had conquered. But then came the catastrophe. Earthquakes of unimaginable power, floods that swallowed entire nations. In a single day and night of misfortune, the Athenian army was swallowed by the earth, and the island of Atlantis sank into the depths of the sea, leaving behind only a shoal of impassable mud. This is the story as Plato told it. And for 2,000 years, humanity has asked the same question. Did this happen? Was there truly an Atlantis? Let us imagine it. Close your eyes if you wish, or let them rest softly on the shadows of this room. Picture the island as Plato described it in the Critias, his second dialogue on the subject. He provides dimensions, measurements, details that seem too precise to be mere invention. The island of Atlantis was large, a land of fertile plains and towering mountains. At its heart was a plain, rectangular in shape, stretching 3,000 stadia in one direction and 2,000 stadia inland from the sea. If we convert these ancient measurements, we are speaking of a plain roughly 370 miles long and 250 miles wide. Vast, a territory larger than many modern nations. The mountains that surrounded this plain were celebrated as the most numerous and beautiful in the world. Villages and lakes and rivers and meadows dotted the landscape, providing sustenance for a huge population. But the true wonder was the capital city, built on a low mountain near the center of the island, about 50 stadia from the sea. This mountain had once been the home of Poseidon, god of the sea, who fell in love with a mortal woman named Plato. To protect her, Poseidon carved the mountain into concentric rings, alternating between water and land. 2 rings of land and 3 rings of water, each perfectly circular, each separated from the others by channels that could be crossed only by boat or bridge. The descendants of Poseidon and Plato, the kings of Atlantis, expanded this natural fortress into a city of breathtaking beauty. They built bridges across the rings of water and tunnels through the rings of land, creating a passage from the sea to the central island. The passage was large enough for the greatest ships to sail through, entering into the heart of the city. The outermost ring of land was fortified with walls. The second ring of land held the training grounds for the cavalry, the barracks for the soldiers, and the homes of the nobles. But the innermost island, the original mountain of Poseidon, was the crown jewel of Atlantis. Here stood the palace of the kings, a structure that grew more magnificent with each generation. The walls were covered in brass, tin, and the rare metal orichalcum, which Plato describes as glowing like fire. Orichalcum, a word that translates roughly as mountain copper, was said to be found nowhere else in the world, a metal unique to Atlantis, more precious than gold. The temple of Poseidon stood at the very center of the innermost island. It was enormous, a building 300 feet long, 150 feet wide, and proportionally tall. The outside was covered entirely in silver, except for the roof, which was plated in gold. Inside, the ceiling was crafted from ivory, inlaid with gold and silver and orichalcum. And at the heart of the temple stood a statue of Poseidon himself, so tall that his head nearly touched the ceiling. The god was depicted standing in a chariot, pulled by 6 winged horses, surrounded by 100 nereids riding dolphins. The statue was made of gold, a monument to the divine ancestry of the Atlantean kings. Surrounding the temple were golden statues of all the kings and queens of Atlantis, of the wives and descendants of the original 10 kings, and of all the citizens who had distinguished themselves through great deeds. The wealth on display was beyond measure, a testament to the power and prosperity of the empire. The city itself was bustling, alive with commerce and innovation. The rings of water served as harbors, filled with triremes and merchant vessels from every corner of the known world. The docks were crowded day and night, and the sound of voices speaking 100 languages filled the air. Trade goods flowed into Atlantis from every direction. Ivory from Africa, amber from the northern seas, spices from the east, silver from Spain. But Atlantis was not merely a hub of trade. It was a center of knowledge and engineering. The Atlanteans had built an aqueduct system that brought fresh water from mountain springs to every part of the city. They had hot springs and cold springs, and they built bathhouses and gymnasiums around them, places for the citizens to gather and strengthen their bodies. They had temples to many gods, gardens that were the envy of the world, and a race course for horses that ran along the outermost ring of land, a full circuit of the city. The canals were lined with buildings, and bridges arched gracefully over the water, decorated with towers and gates. Beyond the city, the Great Plain was a marvel of agricultural engineering. The Atlanteans had dug a network of canals that crisscrossed the entire plain, bringing water from the rivers and allowing for irrigation. The main canal was over 10,000 stadia in length, fed by tributaries that flowed down from the mountains. During the rainy season, the excess water was drained into the sea, preventing floods. The plain was divided into 60,000 districts, each responsible for providing a certain number of soldiers in time of war. The military power of Atlantis was staggering. They could field an army of hundreds of thousands, supported by a navy that ruled the waves of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. For generations, the Atlantean kings ruled with wisdom and justice. They followed the laws that Poseidon had inscribed on a pillar of Orichalcum in the temple, laws that emphasized virtue and harmony over material wealth. Every 5th and 6th year, the 10 kings would gather in the temple, sacrificing a bull without weapons, using only wooden clubs, symbolizing their commitment to peace among themselves. After the sacrifice, they would dip a cup into the blood of the bull, mixing it with wine, and pour it over the pillar as a libation. Then they would drink from the cup and swear an oath to uphold the laws of Poseidon, to judge fairly, and to never take up arms against one another. They wore robes of dark blue, and in the night they sat in the ashes of the sacrifice, judging cases and giving verdicts, which they wrote on a golden tablet and dedicated to Poseidon. For many generations, this system held. The kings were more divine than human, and they valued virtue above wealth and power. They bore their prosperity with grace, seeing material goods as a burden if not guided by reason and morality. But slowly, over time, the divine portion of their nature was diluted by the mortal strain. Human nature gained the upper hand. The Atlanteans grew proud. They began to see themselves not as servants of the divine, but as masters of the world. They pursued conquest for the sake of glory. They accumulated wealth for the sake of luxury. The virtue that had made them great was eroded by greed and ambition. And Zeus, the king of the gods, saw what was happening. He saw that a once honorable race had become corrupted, and he decided to punish them, to teach them a lesson and restore them to virtue. Zeus called together all the gods to his dwelling place at the center of the universe. And when they had assembled, he spoke. And here the Critias ends. Plato never completed the dialogue. We never learn what Zeus said or what form the punishment took. The story cuts off at the moment of greatest tension, leaving us with only the earlier statement from the Timaeus. That Atlantis was destroyed by earthquakes and floods, sinking into the sea in a single day and night. Why did Plato stop writing? Some scholars believe he died before finishing the work. Others suggest that the incompleteness is deliberate, a philosophical choice, leaving the reader to contemplate the nature of justice and divine retribution. But for those who believe in the historical Atlantis, the abrupt ending is frustrating. A locked door at the end of a long corridor. So we are left to wonder and to search. And for over 2,000 years, that is exactly what humanity has done. The search for Atlantis has taken explorers to every corner of the globe. Some have looked beneath the waves of the Atlantic Ocean, reasoning that Plato's description of a land beyond the Pillars of Hercules must be taken literally. In the 19th century, Ignatius L. Donnelly, an American politician and writer, published Atlantis, the antediluvian world, arguing that Atlantis was a real continent that once existed in the middle of the Atlantic, connecting Europe and Africa to the Americas. Donnelly believed that Atlantis was the original source of all human civilization, the mother culture from which all others descended. He pointed to similarities in the pyramids of Egypt and Mesoamerica, to flood myths that appear in cultures around the world, to the legends of a golden age that persist in human memory. All of this, he argued, was evidence of Atlantis. Donnelly's book was enormously popular, going through dozens of editions and sparking a wave of interest in the lost continent. But his theory faced a significant problem. There is no geological evidence for a sunken continent in the Atlantic. The mid-Atlantic ridge, the underwater mountain range that runs down the center of the Atlantic Ocean, is volcanically active, yes, but it is rising, not sinking. The spreading of the seafloor pushes the Americas away from Europe and Africa, not the other way around. Still, the ocean floor holds mysteries. In the 1960s, sonar surveys detected what appeared to be man-made structures near the island of Bimini in the Bahamas. The so-called Bimini Road is a formation of large, rectangular limestone blocks that stretches for half a mile beneath the shallow water. Some researchers claimed these were the remains of an Atlantean road or harbor wall. But geologists have examined the formation extensively, and the consensus is that the Bimini Road is a natural formation created by the fracturing and erosion of the limestone bedrock. The blocks are too regular, too perfectly aligned, because they formed along natural fault lines. Still, the mystery endures, and divers still visit the site, hoping to find evidence that might overturn the scientific consensus. Others have looked to the Mediterranean, arguing that Plato's account must be understood metaphorically, or that the measurements were exaggerated. The most popular Mediterranean candidate is the island of Santorini, known in ancient times as Thera. In the 17th century, before the Common Era, a volcanic eruption of cataclysmic proportions destroyed most of the island, burying the Minoan settlement of Akrotiri under layers of ash. The eruption of Thera was one of the largest in recorded history, far more powerful than the eruption of Mount Vesuvius that destroyed Pompeii. The explosion generated tsunamis that devastated the coasts of the eastern Mediterranean, and the ash cloud would have darkened the skies for months. Some scholars believe that this eruption and the destruction of the Minoan civilization that followed was the historical event that inspired Plato's story of Atlantis. The Minoans were a sophisticated Bronze Age civilization centered on the island of Crete, but with settlements throughout the Aegean. They built palaces of remarkable complexity, with advanced plumbing and beautiful frescoes. They traded across the Mediterranean, and their art and culture influenced the later Greeks. The sudden collapse of Minoan power around the time of the Thera eruption is one of the great mysteries of ancient history. If Atlantis is a memory of Thera and the Minoans, then Plato's account makes a certain kind of sense. concentric rings of water and land could be a poetic description of the flooded caldera, the collapsed volcanic crater that forms the Bay of Santorini today. The advanced technology and culture match what we know of the Minoans, and the sudden destruction by earthquake and flood aligns with the eruption. But there are problems with this theory as well. Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic, not in the Mediterranean. He described it as larger than Libya and Asia combined, far larger than Santorini. And he dated the destruction to 9,000 years before Solon's time, which would be around 9600 BCE, thousands of years before the Minoan civilization existed. Some scholars suggest that Plato simply made an error, or that the Egyptian priests exaggerated the dates, multiplying by 10 where they should have multiplied by 1. If the destruction occurred 900 years before Solon, rather than 9,000, that would place it in the middle of the second millennium BCE, very close to the time of the Thera eruption. But this requires us to assume that Plato, or his sources, were mistaken about basic facts, which seems unlikely for a philosopher known for his precision. So the mystery deepens. Other locations have been proposed. Some place Atlantis in Antarctica, suggesting that the continent was once free of ice and home to an ancient civilization. Others look to the Black Sea or to submerged land masses in the North Sea, or to the Azores Islands in the mid-Atlantic. There are those who believe Atlantis was in South America, or Indonesia, or even Ireland. Each theory has its proponents, its evidence, its maps and measurements and arguments. And each theory, examined closely, has its flaws, its gaps, its moments where the evidence does not quite align with Plato's description. It is as if Atlantis exists in a space between fact and fiction, real enough to inspire belief, but elusive enough to evade proof. Perhaps that is the nature of Atlantis. place that can be found on a map, but a symbol, an archetype that lives in the human imagination. The golden age we lost, the hubris that led to our fall, the warning that no empire, no matter how powerful, is immune to the consequences of its own corruption. Plato was, after all, a philosopher, not a historian. The Timaeus and the Critias are philosophical dialogues, works designed to explore ideas about the ideal state, about virtue and justice, about the proper ordering of society. Atlantis, in this reading, is a thought experiment, a fictional empire created to illustrate what happens when a society abandons virtue in favor of power. The story of Atlantis is paired, in the Critias, with a description of the ideal Athens, the city as it should be. This ancient Athens is modeled on the principles Plato outlined in his Republic, with a strict division between classes, with the guardians living communally and holding no private property, with the philosophers ruling as kings. This Athens, virtuous and disciplined, defeats the decadent Atlantis, proving that virtue is stronger than material wealth. In this interpretation, the sinking of Atlantis is not a historical event, but a moral lesson. The empire that abandons the gods, that pursues wealth and conquest over wisdom and justice, will inevitably destroy itself. The sea that swallows Atlantis is the chaos that lies beneath all civilizations, the entropy that waits for the moment when order and virtue fail. But even if we accept that Atlantis is a parable, it does not mean that Plato invented it from whole cloth. Myths and legends often contain kernels of historical truth, distorted by time and retelling, but preserving a memory of something that actually happened. Perhaps Plato took a real event, a real place, and shaped it into a story that served his philosophical purposes. There are flood myths in nearly every ancient culture. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the story of Noah, the Greek myth of Deucalion, the Hindu legend of Manu. These stories all describe a great deluge that wiped out most of humanity, sparing only a few righteous individuals who rebuilt the world. Some researchers believe these myths are a cultural memory of the end of the last ice age, when rising sea levels flooded coastal settlements around the world. Between 12,000 and 8,000 years ago, as the glaciers melted, sea levels rose by more than 300 feet. Vast areas of land that had been inhabited were submerged. The Bering Land Bridge, which connected Asia and North America, disappeared beneath the waves. The Persian Gulf, once a fertile valley, became a sea. Doggerland, a landmass that connected Britain to continental Europe, was gradually inundated. If human beings were living in these places, and we know that they were, then they would have witnessed the slow, inexorable rise of the sea, the loss of their homes and fields, the displacement of entire populations. Over generations, this would have been a catastrophe of mythic proportions, and the memory of it, passed down through oral tradition, could have been shaped into the flood myths we find in ancient texts. Could Atlantis be a memory of one of these lost lands? Could it be a story about Doggerland, or about a settlement in the Persian Gulf, or about some other place that was swallowed by the rising seas? It is possible. But if so, the memory would have been heavily distorted, embellished with details about golden temples and Orichalcum and divine kings, details that say more about human imagination than about historical reality. Or perhaps the truth is simpler. Perhaps Plato heard stories during his travels, stories about the advanced civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia, about the seafaring prowess of the Phoenicians, about the wealth of the Persian Empire. Perhaps he combined these elements, added his own philosophical ideas, and created a story that was never meant to be taken as literal history, but was always intended as an allegory. The question of Atlantis's reality may be unanswerable, but the story itself, the the idea of Atlantis has had a profound impact on human culture. It has inspired countless works of art and literature, from Francis Bacon's New Atlantis to Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, to the animated films and comic books of the 20th century. It has fueled pseudoscientific theories and genuine archaeological expeditions. It has become a lens through which we view our own societies, a mirror that reflects our fears of decline and our hopes for renewal. And so, in the absence of definitive proof, we are free to imagine. We can picture the city of concentric rings, the golden statue of Poseidon, the ships sailing through the great canal into the heart of the empire. We can walk the streets of Atlantis in our minds, admiring the architecture, listening to the voices in the marketplace, feeling the warm breeze from the sea. And perhaps, in this act of imagination, we come closer to understanding what Plato intended. Not to give us a history lesson, but to make us think, to make us question the values of our own societies, to consider what happens when we prioritize wealth over wisdom, power over virtue, to remind us that all empires, no matter how great, are fragile, and that the sea of chaos is always waiting just beyond the walls. The night is deepening now. The candle on the desk has burned lower, its flame steady and small. Outside, the world is quiet. The distant sound of the ocean, a soft whisper, a reminder of the depths that lie beyond our sight. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts drift like a ship on a calm sea, rocking gently, moving further and further from the shore. We have traveled far tonight, through the words of Plato, through the theories of scholars, through the landscapes of imagination. We have searched for Atlantis and found, perhaps, that it was always here, in the stories we tell, in the symbols we create, in the eternal questions we carry. Think of the library of Atlantis, if such a place existed. imagine the scrolls and tablets, the accumulated wisdom of generations, the knowledge of the stars and the earth and the human heart. What was written there? What discoveries were made? What philosophies developed? What poetry composed? All of it lost, if it ever was, sunk beneath the waves, dissolved by salt water, eroded by time. But in another sense, nothing is ever truly lost. Every story leaves a trace. Every civilization influences the ones that come after. The Atlanteans, if they existed, would have left their mark on the world, in the genes of the survivors, in the technologies that spread, in the myths that were remembered. And even if they never existed, the idea of them has shaped us, has made us ask questions about our own origins, our own potential, our own vulnerabilities. So perhaps the search for Atlantis is not about finding a place on a map. Perhaps it is about finding something in ourselves, the ambition to build something great, the wisdom to maintain it, the humility to accept that all things, even the greatest empires, are temporary. The ancient Egyptians, with their temples of stone and their carefully preserved records, believed in permanence. They thought that by building monuments that could withstand the ages, by mummifying their dead, by writing their names in hieroglyphs, they could achieve a kind of immortality. And in a way, they succeeded. We remember the pharaohs. We read the inscriptions. We stand in awe before the pyramids. But even Egypt fell. The Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, all rose and fell in cycles. The pharaohs were conquered by the Persians, by the Greeks, by the Romans. The temples were buried by sand, the cities abandoned, the language forgotten. It took thousands of years, and much of what they built endures. But the Egypt of the pharaohs is gone, as surely as Atlantis. Everything that rises must fall. Everything that is built will crumble. This is the lesson of time, the truth that we spend our lives trying to deny or forget. But it is also, paradoxically, a source of comfort. If nothing lasts forever, then our mistakes are not permanent. If every empire falls, then new ones can rise. The cycle of creation and destruction is the heartbeat of the universe, and we are part of it, whether we like it or not. Atlantis, then, is both a warning and a promise. A warning that no matter how powerful we become, we are not immune to the forces of nature, to the consequences of our own choices, and a promise that even after the greatest catastrophe, even after the sea has swallowed everything we built, something will survive. A story, a memory, a seed that will sprout in the next age. Rest now. Let your mind settle like silt on the ocean floor, layers upon layers, building up slowly over time. You are safe here in this room, in this moment, far from the earthquakes and floods of ancient days. The world outside will still be there when you wake, with all its questions and mysteries, its searches and theories, its endless debate over what is real and what is imagined. But for now, let it all go. Let Atlantis sink once more, not into the sea, but into the depths of sleep, where dreams and myths and history all blend together, where the boundaries between what was and what might have been dissolve like salt in water. The concentric rings of water and land shimmer in your mind's eye, reflecting the moon, the stars, the distant lights of ships passing in the night. The temple of Poseidon glows softly, its orichalcum walls like embers, warm and fading. The voices in the marketplace grow quieter, softer, until they are only a murmur, a hum, a vibration that you feel more than hear. And then silence. The kind of silence that exists only in the deepest part of the ocean, where the pressure is immense and the darkness is absolute. A silence that is not empty, but full, pregnant with possibilities, with all the things that were, and all the things that could be. Float in that silence. Let it hold you. You are suspended between the surface and the floor, neither rising nor falling, simply existing, simply being. There is no need to search anymore, no need to prove or disprove, to argue or defend. The question of Atlantis can wait. The mysteries of the past can wait. Right now, there is only this breath, and this moment, and this deep, restful peace. The water around you is warm, supportive, carrying your weight so that you need not. The currents are gentle, rocking you slowly, rhythmically, a lullaby without words. Somewhere far above, the surface glitters with sunlight, but here in the depths, there is only the soft glow of bioluminescent creatures, drifting past like stars, like memories, like dreams. You are safe, you are held. You are descending now, not into danger, but into rest. The ocean floor rises to meet you, soft and welcoming, a bed of sand that molds to your form. You settle into it, and it settles over you, a blanket of the finest particles, warm and heavy and soothing. Above you, the ruins of Atlantis stand in the darkness. Columns of marble, toppled but still beautiful. Walls of brass and tin, corroded by salt, but still recognizable. The great canal, silted over, now a trench where fish swim in schools, glittering silver in the dim light. The palace of the kings, its doors open to the sea, its halls filled with water and silence. But these ruins are not sad. They are peaceful. They have accepted their fate, and in accepting it, they have found a kind of grace. They do not resist the tide, do not fight the erosion. They simply exist, slowly returning to the earth, to the raw materials from which they were made. Stone to sand, metal to rust, the cycle continuing always. And you too can let go. Let go of the need to understand everything, to solve every mystery, to find every answer. Let go of the day's worries, the tensions in your body, the thoughts that circle and circle in your mind. They are like ships on the surface of the ocean, far above you now, and growing farther with every breath. Breathe in slowly, deeply. Feel the water fill your lungs, cool and clean. Hold it for a moment, feeling its weight, its presence. Then breathe out, releasing, letting everything flow away. Breathe in again, and out, in and out, the rhythm of the tides, the rhythm of the earth, the rhythm of sleep. Your body is heavy now, so heavy that you could not move even if you wanted to. But you do not want to. You want only to rest, to sink deeper, to let the ocean take you to the place beyond dreams, the place where consciousness dissolves, and all that remains is the soft, dark, eternal now. The candle flame wavers, grows smaller. The shadows lengthen, reaching across the room like the fingers of night, gentle and kind. They do not frighten you. They are familiar, comforting, the absence of light that makes rest possible. Think of the Atlanteans in their final moments. Did they know what was coming? Did they feel the first tremors of the earthquake, the sudden lurch of the ground beneath their feet? Did they hear the roar of the water, the crashing of the waves, the screaming of the wind? Or did it happen too quickly, too suddenly, for them to understand? Perhaps some of them escaped. Perhaps they boarded ships and sailed away, carrying with them what they could, leaving behind the city of their birth, the temples of their gods, the graves of their ancestors. Perhaps they landed on distant shores and told their story to whoever would listen, planting the seeds of the myth that would, thousands of years later, reach the ears of Plato. Perhaps they did not escape. Perhaps they stood in the temple of Poseidon as the water rushed in, holding fast to the pillars, praying to the God who had once loved their people, asking for mercy even as they knew none would come. Perhaps they went down with their city, becoming part of it, their bones settling into the ruins, their stories lost in the depths. Either way, they are at peace now. The struggle is over. The fear is gone. There is only the ocean, vast and timeless, covering everything with its weight, its silence, its patient, inexorable presence. And you too are at peace. The struggle of the day is over. The fear, if there was any, is gone. There is only this room, this bed, this moment of perfect stillness. You are not an empire rising and falling. You are not a city crumbling under the weight of time. You are simply yourself, a single consciousness, resting, breathing, existing. The story of Atlantis is a long one, stretching across millennia, told and retold in countless forms. But your story is yours alone, and tonight it is a story of rest, of letting go, of sinking into the soft darkness and allowing sleep to claim you, gently, completely. The ocean is quiet now. No more waves, no more currents, no more movement. Only stillness, only depth, only the weight of water pressing down, not to crush, but to hold, to embrace, to keep you safe in the womb of the world. And in that stillness, you are not alone. The spirits of Atlantis are with you, if they ever existed. And even if they did not, the idea of them is with you. The idea of a golden age, a time of beauty and wisdom, a place where people strove to be better, to build higher, to reach further. That idea is eternal, and it lives in you as it lives in all of us. A spark of divinity that no flood can extinguish. Sleep now, seeker. Let the waves of thought recede. Let the tides of worry ebb away. Let the ocean of night cover you completely, until there is nothing left but the soft, rhythmic pulse of your own heartbeat, slow and steady, the drumbeat of life, continuing on always. The temple is dark. The candles have gone out. The scrolls are rolled and put away. The maps are folded. The books are closed. There is nothing more to read, nothing more to learn, not tonight. Tonight is for rest, for the deep, dreamless sleep that restores the soul. And when you wake, if if you remember this at all, it will be like a dream itself, a half-remembered journey to the bottom of the sea, to the ruins of a city that may never have existed, to a place that lives only in stories and in the imagination. But that is enough. That has always been enough. Atlantis is not lost. It was never lost. It is here, in this room, in this moment, in the space between waking and sleeping, in the silence between breaths. It is the place we go when we close our eyes and let go, the island of peace in the ocean of consciousness, the refuge we seek when the world becomes too much. And you have found it. You are there now. You are home. The water is warm. The darkness is soft. The silence is complete. Sleep deep, restful, eternal sleep. Good night, seeker. Until we meet again in the library of the liminal. The ocean holds you. The night enfolds you. And Atlantis, that beautiful, impossible dream, dissolves once more into the depths, taking you with it, gently, softly, into the realm of perfect rest.